because, man, when I started watching ECW, first, Eastern, and then you got involved Extreme, and it was just, man, it hit you. You felt it. And you didn't just watch it, but you felt it. And it was energy from top to bottom. So what were you thinking, Eric?
Well, I was frustrated because I'd been fired from WCW, and then I sued them, and I got a nice large settlement, and I was actually out of the business. I was signed by the William Morris Agency in New York, an agent by the name of Jonathan Trump. And they had a vision of going head to head with Howard Stern, who was at the time the end all be all. And there was a hip hop station in New York called Hot 97. And Hot 97 had made the commitment, we're going to go up against Howard Stern. So here's a smart ass Jewish kid from Scarsdale, New York. And I was going to go head to head with Howard Stern starting that September. And I mean, the deal was cut. It was here we were going. I was out of the business. It's funny that I say this now because it's 20 years later,
right?
But I was 21 now. I was burned out. I wanted out, and I had my fill, and I was done. I played Paulie dangerously. I had a blast. Time to move on and do something else. And I'm on the phone with Jim Crockett, whose contract was expiring. His non-compete was expiring with WCW. And he said, so what are you going to do now? And I said, I'm going to do radio. I'm going to get involved in something else. And he said, don't you think the business needs a change? I said, yes. And I start rattling off. I think we need to be more contemporary. These guys don't even know what hip hop is. They have no sensation of what the audience is looking for today. I think you need more reality-based programming. I think you need characters that are more based on the actual. And I start running off what ended up being the ECW vision. And Crockett says, so you're just going to be one of these guys that bitch and moan and complain about it, and you're not going to do anything to change the system, because you can't change the system from the outside. You can only change it from the inside. He says, you know what? Maybe you should leave the business. The business has enough locker room lawyers as it is. Thank you, Mr. Luger. I appreciate your contributions. You sound just like Abdullah the Butcher. Bitch, 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 moan, 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 but you won't do anything about it. And he hung up on me.
Straight up. That's a shoot.
Click. Right? Jim Crockett Jr. of all people. I mean, really?
And he cut that promo on you.
Bitch slapped me.
Right.
Bitch slapped me. I'm like, wow. And I'm walking around all pissed off all day. Like, I'm going to call him back and tell him he's right. He's right. I won't do anything. I'm just like everybody else. Bitch, I'm just a locker room lawyer. Why don't I do something about it? And Joey Styles tells this story better than I do, because I told it to him back in the day, and I had too much. I smoked way too much pot in the 1990s to really remember these stories accurately. But anyway, that day I was watching MTV, and the first video that came on after Beavis and Butthead, because I was a huge Beavis and Butthead fan because I was stoned, was LL Cool J's Mama Said Knock You Out. And I watched it, and the angles and the way that they shot him in the fogged out arena with the old school microphone that dropped down like in the first Rocky movie, or like in the Madison Square Garden days back when superstar Billy Graham was champion. And I just said, man, it's vision. It doesn't have to just be matches, and now here's your next enhancement match. You can put anything you want on the air if you cut it and you make it stylistic and you give it an edge and you give it a beat, that there's something that you can't take your eyes off. Because no matter how many times they re-aired that video that day, I watched it from beginning to end with my jaw open. I just go, wow, there's something fascinating about this. And I called Jim Crockett back and I said, I'm in. And he wanted to start what we were going to call the World Wrestling Network. Now, at the same time, I had to now disassociate myself with the deal from Hot 97 and piss off the William Morris Agency. And now I'm saying, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to change the industry. Eddie Gilbert.
But so you were going to get into radio broadcasting.
Yes.
And you were going to go head to head with Howard Stern.
I was out.
And you just said, piss on it. I'm not going to do that. I'm getting back in the wrestling game.
And Jim Crockett talked me into it by bitch slapping me on the phone.
God, but what could have happened? Do you ever think about that? Had you done the radio thing?
See, it's funny. My father taught me a long time ago, if your aunt had balls, she'd be your uncle. but she doesn't have balls, so she's not your uncle. So call her Aunt Roseanne.
Yeah.
So
don't even worry about what could have been.
I never deal with
Yeah.
ifs. Because if we're going to deal with ifs.
But I'm just talking because I know you as a bright, sharp-minded guy with a quick, wit and talk a mile a minute and make sense.
Right.
So I just think, yeah, you would have been damn good on the air.
Oh, I'd have kicked Howard Stern's ass.
Yeah.
And probably, ended up with his deal on Sirius Satellite Radio with $100 million. And here I am doing WrestleMania 30, sitting up in your hotel room doing the Steve Austin podcast, which will now be broadcast from now on from your basement, like Jay-Z and Beyonce and like the old ECW TV shows.
Hallelujah. So back in the wrestling business.
So I was back in, and then Eddie Gilbert was in Philadelphia. And back then, Eddie Gilbert and I were thick as thieves. He was my brother. He was my mentor. He was my best friend. And he was in Philadelphia running Eastern Championship Wrestling with Todd Gordon, but it was falling apart because this was not the same Eddie that had contributed so much to the business.
Right.
This was the end of the line for Eddie, and he had lost himself in the narcotics that had taken over his life. So it was falling apart for Eddie bad, and Todd was desperate for somebody.
Was he that bad off?
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful. It wasn't him anymore.
Yeah.
A different human being. I mean, if you look at the creativity, we were in Alabama together in 1988 before I went to WCW. And we had a skeleton crew. And he was so magnificent as we worked well together, but clearly I was his deputy. I was his assistant. I was his protege. Clearly, he knew what he was doing. He could find so much in so little. And yet, if he had a real good talent, what he could do with them. And he popped that territory. I mean, truly popped that territory. And fast.
And that would have been Continental?
And lasted. Yeah, Continental.
Okay.
I mean, he popped it fast, and it lasted the entire summer.
Right.
And it was just brilliant, the stuff that he was coming up. Now, most of it, admittedly, was stuff that he watched that Lawler and Jarrett had booked in Memphis years before, but he put a new spin on it. I mean, just as an example, because I'm a big believer in this. So many people talk about one of their favorite ECW angles of all time was the Sandman angle when we blinded him and he stayed in his house for 4 weeks. And we've said, he's gone, he's retiring. And he came out. And of course, he revealed he wasn't really blind and he beat the living dog crap out of Tommy Dreamer. Okay. And everybody, and it's funny because, this is one of you. Oh, what a genius thing, Paul Ball. Did you see how Heyman booked that? Okay. Here's why it's not that much genius. Do you remember the old Southern angle where a guy would come out with a broken arm? I broke my arm last night in Oakenfield, Kentucky, and I can't wrestle Jerry Lawler or Bill Dundee or Robert Fowler, whoever the babyface was. And my arm is broken. I'm going to get you next week when this cast comes off my arm. And of course, the babyface comes down and goes, well, I'll fight your man, whoever. Oh, here's my man right now. And maybe, some big, fat, 400-pound guy behind him. And when the babyface turns around, out comes the arm. Whoa, bam, down goes the babyface, right? And you gave it away in 5 minutes of television.
Right.
Same thing that we did with the Sandman. We, quote unquote, blinded him. He played blind, but we didn't do it for one day. We didn't do it for 5 minutes. We did it for 4 or 5 weeks. And we milked it out to where it got the most possible impact. It was just an updated version of one of the oldest angles in the business.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
Hey, I want to tell you guys about Cushy Dreams. Cushy Dreams offers a full lineup of premium smokable CBD. They specialize in extraordinary CBD-rich hemp flower, a.k.a. bud, in cans and pre-roll CBD joints. Enjoy all of the health benefits of CBD without getting high, under 0.3 THC. It's cannabis that ships directly to you, and it's legal in all 50 states. Join the men and women who are sick of vapes and gummies and want to smoke their CBD. Smoke your CBD. Looks like high-quality marijuana, feels like high-quality marijuana, and tastes like high-quality marijuana. Independent lab tests to show compliance and purity are posted on their website. Grown in the USA, Cushy Dreams has CBD flower in and pre-rolls. They come in specific indica, sativa blends like Energy, Hustle, Relax, and Dream. My producer Sean says he likes to smoke the Relax strain before bed to get some shut-eye after editing the podcast. He says it tastes great, exactly like high-quality weed. He would know. And hey, it can be really helpful for these anxious times of 2020. Go to cushydreams.com, Kushy. Get some high-quality CBD bud. At checkout, use promo code STEVE for 20% off every order. Cushy Dreams. Smoke your CBD.
The Steve Austin Show. The Steve Austin Show.
Paul Dangerously. Paulie Heyman. It's Paul Dangerously. But you grew up your whole life in New York.
Yes.
So how, when you, all of a sudden, you got the wrestling bug, no, you were taking pictures.
Yes.
You were a photographer, but how'd you end up getting your first managing gig down in the South?
Well, I actually started in the Northeast, and Kevin Sullivan had come up for a show. And, you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
And I knew Kevin from when I was a photographer because I had put him and Nancy on the cover of a few wrestling magazines. And so Kevin knew me. And the funniest thing was, the month before I started as a manager, I was actually down in Florida taking pictures for all the magazines. And I was joking around with Humperdinck, and Humperdinck going, brother, you should do this on television, brother. I'm like, no, I did this on television. I really had no ambition to actually perform.
Come on.
I didn't really think I could have done it. I really, you know, to make it, you have to make it to Madison. You know, to me, the end all be all would be to Madison.
What was it about the business that you just latched onto from your earliest memories?